Hey guys, this is the second lecture since I've been gone. For some of you, this is Tuesday. For some of you, this is Wednesday. If you were absent on Monday, March 5th, or if you were one of the groups that went to listen to the band concert, I need you to make sure that you complete everything from my March 5th video first before you move on to this one for March 6th. Okay, because I'm going to reference some stuff that I talked about last video that you won't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let me get started, present this screen, get all that other junk out of the way. Maybe. Okay, there we go. So March 6th, I'm going to focus on just North Africa. I've spent a lot of time talking to you about the Middle East and then about MENA in general last lecture, and telling you that some geographers classify all of North Africa to be included in the Middle East. But for us, we're just going to say that the Middle East is Southwest Asia. Talk about North Africa a little bit differently. But the reason that we talk about North Africa with the Middle East is because, remember, they share a lot of cultural characteristics. So I want you to pause the video, get your book out, and turn to page 582. Okay, 582. It's written right there. So pause this video, get out your book, turn to 582. This map looks very similar to the one from the previous lecture, with the exception of it zoomed in to just North Africa. So where you see all this colored area, these would be the countries that make up North Africa. Okay, the rest of the African continent would be below. I don't know why my mouse is jumping like that. Okay, the rest of the African continent would be down here. Europe is up here. This would be Spain, the boot of Italy. And then here's the Middle East. You see it says Southwest Asia. Remember, Southwest Asia is the Middle East. Okay, so this would be the Middle East. And the Middle East does include the Sinai Peninsula, where part of Egypt is at. So I'm going to reiterate a few things that I said last video. I want to point out that we have the way that these are written. We have our countries written all bold, all caps. With the exception over here of Western Sahara, it is all caps, but it's not in bold. It's claimed by Morocco, but there's some conflict there. And you'll see on a paper that you're going to get today, that you may have already gotten, on that paper, across the bottom it says, Western Sahara was not recognized as an independent country by the U.S. State Department. So there's some issues there. Just like last time, there's those Canary Islands. They are a territory of Spain. That's why they're not written in all caps, like the countries are. Remember that Spain was on this peninsula right there. Okay, and we have this little narrow strait. Remember, strait is a body of water. The Strait of Gibraltar, right there. That little narrow inlet that separates Europe from Africa. I talked last time about the major cities and the capital cities being, and Algiers is in the crease, being along the coastline. Alexandria, and then Cairo being on the Nile River. And that was important for a couple of different reasons. The fact that it's just water, they needed water. It was a water source, but also mainly because of trade. Trade with Europe coming across the Mediterranean. Also over here in Southwest Asia some, although they could go the land route if they needed to. Let me talk just about Egypt, just about this area right here. specifically the river that runs through Egypt. And people are always surprised every year when I say Egypt is in Africa, because we don't think of what we think of when we think of Egypt would be like the pyramids down here. And then on the news, when they talk about Africa, it's usually these people in huts, wearing this really colorful jewelry, and it just doesn't always go with our idea of Egypt. So I always get students every year that are like, what? Egypt's in Africa? But remember, part of it is in the Middle East. So in talking specifically about Egypt, several things I want to point out. One is the Nile River. This is an incredible, important water source for the people of Egypt. In fact, the majority of people in Egypt live by the Nile River, and I'm going to give you a percentage in just a moment in the book. Cairo, the capital, is right here at the top where you see it looks like it branches off in all these different directions. The end of the Nile River is a delta, and you should have talked about a delta in 5th grade science. So when I say that, you should know what it means. It's that accumulation of sediment at the end of a river where it's emptying out into a larger body of water. So the Nile River flows and empties out into the Mediterranean, and it creates this delta up here. Another thing I want to talk about is right here, and you're going to be able to see these words better in your textbook, which is why I wanted you to have your textbook out. It says that this little line right here is called the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal, canals are man-made. So even though that looks like it's a river, the Suez Canal is man-made. It's not naturally occurring. And the reason it's so important enough to be put on this map, is because it allows boats to go from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea and ultimately out into the Indian Ocean. Without this canal being built, the big boats had to go around all of Africa underneath and then back up to this side. So the construction of the Suez Canal allowed boats to go straight from the Mediterranean into the Red Sea. Hugely important for the development of trade, in cutting down on transportation time. And so as a result, it decreased the amount of money that needed to be spent to ship goods from one place to another. Another thing in Egypt I want to talk about is this dam right here. And we're going to watch a video today over this dam. So Egypt has constructed this dam as a way to help keep the Nile from flooding. It's a method of control. When you've talked about dams in science, you're talking about them mainly as a way to generate electricity, which it does. But it's also a way to help control flooding. Dams help control flooding. And remember, I talked about the Tigris, the Euphrates, and the Nile River all overflowing their banks, and that's what created the Fertile Crescent. Well, they constructed this dam as a way to help control that flooding, so that you didn't have floods here, and then the people here were left without water. So they built this dam, and behind dams, there's always a reservoir that forms. So this lake has formed behind that dam. Okay, so just pointing out some stuff about Egypt. You are going to have some specific questions on your test about Egypt. So I need you to remember, I really, 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 really need you to remember that it's the Nile River that flows through Egypt, and that's going to help you answer my questions on the test. Okay. I want to try to just bring your attention to that. So you picked up this page, or like I said last time, the sub maybe handed it out, or told you to come get it when you needed it, or I don't know how she's doing it, but you should have this packet that has this on the front. And notice my note off to the side, it says put behind divider 3. You will need this later. So this is essentially the same map. Whoa, going the wrong way. This is essentially the same map we just looked at in your book. Oh, my stars. There we go. Except in your book, it was in color, and yours is black and white. So we still see Western Sahara over here, and this is where I was reading from a while ago, where I said Western Sahara was not recognized as an independent country by the U.S. State Department. So the United States doesn't recognize this as an independent country, even though they say they are, but Morocco says they aren't, and it's just craziness. This gray up here is Europe. Here's the Middle East. Okay, so you're going to see me write some stuff on here, and I would like you to write it as well. Kind of like taking notes. And again, I apologize, I'm having to write. I don't have a stylus. I see something really quickly. Nope, not going to work. Okay, so sorry, I'm writing with a mouse, so it's going to look like Scribble Scrabble. So this is Southwest Asia. So this is the Middle East over here. I don't know what it's doing. It won't curve. What is it doing? E. We may not be labeling this map if my mouse won't get it together. So this is the Middle East. I promise that's what it says, the Middle East. Over here. Let me change. Nope, I want blue because I want to draw in the Nile. Okay, so here's going to be that delta of the Nile. And the Nile is going to extend down this way. And I'm going to label it the Nile. Oh, it does not like doing E's, man. Okay, good enough. So there's the Nile. I need you to know where that is. And I'm going to go to yellow because remember, all of this area through here is that Sahara Desert. And you don't have to write these in color. You're just writing with your pencil. There we go. And the Sahara goes a little bit further, but, you know, now I'm nervous about messing up. So that's going to be your Sahara Desert. And remember, I said after spring break, we'll talk about sub-Saharan Africa, which is the part of Africa that's below the Sahara Desert. So your Nile is going through Egypt. All of the northern part is part of the Sahara Desert. We've got the Middle East off to the east. And I was going to try to write the Suez Canal right here, but I think I'm just going to do that in green. And it was right there. And if you want to write Suez, I'm not going to try to write it on over there with all that I already have, but it's spelled like this. Oh my gracious. What is its thing with E's? There. Suez Canal. I need a stylus, something bad. Okay, so what I have in green right there is the Suez Canal. So you can write it in pencil a whole lot easier than I can write it with this mouse. And I was going to write the the dam and the lake down here, but I'm not worried about that. But I would like you to write the Suez Canal right there, because it is extremely important in the development of trade in this area and helping out the economy of countries in this area. And remember that it was man-made. Okay. And now all that's going to be on the next slide. So I'm going to pause it and erase it. So hang on just a second. So if you look at the back behind that map, if you turn your page, still titled Northern Africa, so you can tell it goes with the same thing. There's 2 paragraphs at the top, and it's going to give you a breakdown of some numbers. You know, how many countries make it up, which one's the biggest population, all that stuff. Going to give you some physical geography information about Northern Africa. And then there are 8 questions for you to try to decipher. Now, on part A, it says complete each sentence by unscrambling the word under the line. Use the map of Northern Africa on the other page and the information above to help you. You don't need the map on the other page. All the answers are on the top right here in these 2 paragraphs. You can find all of that. I want you to mark out B. You are not doing that because it has no purpose for what I'm doing. Okay, so you're just doing A, you're doing 1 through 8. So I want you to pause this video, do 1 through 8, leave this packet out because you're going to need the second page in just a minute. So once you're done with 1 through 8, leave your paper out and then unpause this video. And I'm going to continue it by talking about oil. Okay. So you did 1 through 8. You've still got your paper out. And it may be that, you know, you're now to Wednesday. It may be you're still on Tuesday. I don't know. If your textbook is still out, flip to page 590. If it's not still out, go ahead, pause the video, and maybe, I don't know what it's doing today. There we go. And turn to page 590. All right. So pause this video, turn to page 590, and then hit play again. So this is really close to the Middle East. So basically everything I said about the Middle East, I'm going to reiterate and say it about Northern Africa. So on page 590, you see this image and the caption, remember that's the little like descriptive sentence or a couple of sentences underneath the picture that explains the picture. So here's the caption. The caption says, as North Africa's population grows, the demand for water increases. This pump provides water from deep underground to people living in a Sahara environment. And remember, Sahara is the name of that huge desert that makes up Northern Africa. So here's this pump, and it's like, why are you wasting water? Fix the pump or put a bucket down there. But below, before I get to water, it says resources. Talks a little bit about oil and natural gas. What was that fancy scientific word for oil? See if anyone can remember it. Starts with a P. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller. Petroleum. Petroleum. Spelled pretty much the way it's said. Okay, petroleum, that's that fancy word for oil. So oil and natural gas, and I'm just reading right there, are resources that we use to power our cars and trucks and to generate electricity and heat. Some countries of North Africa have these resources in large quantities. So remember, it's the same wording as from yesterday. We said vast amounts. It's the same thing as saying large quantities. Quantity is how much you have. All 5 countries in this region, though, struggle to get enough of another precious resource, water. So we're seeing the same thing as the Middle East. They had an abundance of oil, but a scarcity, remember that word, scarcity of water. So oil, gas, and other resources. It says Libya is the most oil-rich country in North Africa. Its oil reserves are ranked 9th in the world, and it exports more oil than all but 15 other countries. So Libya is really heavily dependent on oil money, obviously. Okay. And then it continues on. It says it also has natural gas. And then the next paragraph says Algeria, right here, has large reserves of natural gas, more than all but 9 other countries, and has large supplies of oil. And that's what's making up most of its exports. But then if we go to the top of page 591, the top of 591 says, like Algeria, Egypt has larger reserves of natural gas than oil. Still, it has enough oil to supply most of what it consumes each year. Egypt even sells a small amount to other countries. So just, letting you know that there's a lot of oil in this area. So the second page behind that map that you just did and answering those 8 questions about Northern Africa, you see this page, and it looks really, really similar to what you got last class period, except last class period said oil production in Asia. This one says oil production in Africa. And it starts off the same way. Oil is a fossil fuel, meaning it formed a long, long time ago from the remains of plants and animals. Oil is the remains of animals. Coal is the remains of plants. And natural gas is the remains of animals. And that's your 3 fossil fuels. So over time, you've got this like perfect storm that forms. You have to have the right amount of those organisms, and you have to have the right amount of heat, and you have to have the right amount of pressure, and you have to have the right amount of time in order for oil, natural gas, and coal to form. But if you have that perfect storm of all that stuff, then crude oil will form. And we heard that its nickname is black gold because oil equals what? Money. Oil equals money. So continuing on down these paragraphs, it talks about oil in Africa, but I want to pay attention to the chart. Okay. The 1 barrel equals 42 gallons or 159 liters is the same as the last chart. So when you did the math on the back of the last chart, it's going to be the same on the back of this one. So you have the top 10 countries in Africa that are producing oil a day. But look at this. On our other chart, on our oil production in Asia chart, our number 1 country on that chart wasn't even getting 1 million a day. So the fact that this country is getting over twice, this country's got some oil, let me tell you. So if we look at our top 10, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the top 10 that are in Northern Africa. So between the two charts represented, this one over Africa and the one yesterday over Asia, represented 20 countries, right? 10 on each chart. 10 plus 10 is 20. 6 on yesterday's chart were in the Middle East. 4 on this chart. So literally half of the countries on these 2 charts are found in the same little area in the world, this MENA area, Middle East, Northern Africa. This area is tremendously rich in oil. Okay, on the back of that, and I don't have that picture on my slideshow, but on the back, you'll see again, it looks very similar to the previous one where you've got 10 questions that are either yes or no. And then B, you have to do a little bit of math for 1, 2, and 3. If you were on, you might be on Wednesday before you're doing this lesson. If you already had this paper, it should be behind divider 3. If you hadn't, if you had done this lesson before today, it should be behind divider 3. Okay, so don't think that you have to go get another one. This was the second page behind, not that. It's the second page behind this one. This was the first page, and then this is the second page in that packet. The last thing I'm going to discuss is water in this area. So on 591, let me discuss a little bit about water, and that's going to start right here. It says limited rainfall and high temperatures in this region leave little fresh water on the surface. Rains can be heavy when they actually happen, but because it's a desert and the soil is very sandy, the sandy soil really soaks up that water. And then dry winds are going to evaporate the rest. So if a wind comes through that doesn't have a lot of moisture in the air that makes up that wind, and it moves through this area after it's rained, the wind itself is going to pick up a lot of that moisture and carry it off. Only the Nile is a reliable source of water for farming throughout the year. So we labeled the Nile on our map going through the country of what? Egypt. Let me circle it because this is a very important paragraph. Second paragraph right here. Really, really super important paragraph. Okay. How vital is the Nile? 95 out of every 100 Egyptians live within 12 miles of the Nile River. Okay. So 12 miles. That's it's you can think roughly of in between Dibal and Lufkin. Okay. 95% of the people who live in the country of Egypt live within 12 miles of the Nile River or the river delta. Okay, so if you look back at your map, I mean, that Nile River, it's not really broad. It's not like it's taking up the entire country. It's, it's a big river, but there's a lot of land that's not by the Nile. So I want you to remember that particular number right there. 95% of Egyptians live within 12 miles of the Nile River. And it's because that's their only dependable water source. Without that water, the people in Egypt couldn't survive. Now, outside of the Nile Valley, most of the region's water needs are met with aquifers, and aquifers are layers of rock that trap water. Okay, water just pools once it soaks through the ground, and it gets to a layer of rock that it can't go through, and then it starts to pile up underground. And so aquifers are these layers of rock that trap water. And then people will dig wells down to that trapped water and pull it up. Okay, so if you're one of the people that lives outside of that 12-mile range around the Nile, then you would probably have a well that goes down and taps into an aquifer. So it says, after I discuss this page, watch the damn video link in Google Classroom that's on the same assignment. And then you're going to come back and we're going to talk about page 608, where you're seeing the camel drink out of the water bottle. Okay, so go back to Google Classroom, watch the video over the dam in Egypt, and then come back. So pause this video, go watch that video, and then come back to this one. All right, so that gave you a little overview over that dam project. You got to see the sheer volume of water that flows through those floodgates at that dam, creating, or not creating, ooh, that was the wrong scientific language to use, generating a lot of electricity for the region. The last page I'm going to talk about is page 608 in the textbook. So if you put your textbook up, get it back out, turn to page 608. On 609, you see the camel drinking out of the water bottle. But I want to just point out a couple of things in these paragraphs. And let's use pink. Why not? So right here, natural and human-made. A country faces water shortages if it lacks the resources to collect water from rivers and from aquifers. Of the world's 15 water-scarce countries, 12 are in MENA, Middle East, North Africa. 12. Out of 15 countries, out of all the 287 countries in the world, okay, 15 of those are considered water scarce, meaning they don't have enough water. 12 of those 15 are in this area, this Middle East, North African area. Okay, it says this region is arid. Okay, arid means, right here, arid means, it means my pen's not working. I'll just come over here and write it. Oh, my stars. Okay. Arid equals dry. So when you see this word right here, arid, this region is arid. Arid is just a fancy word for dry. So this region is arid with few rivers. Also, human interaction with the environment adds to the problem. You have this combination of population growth. So there's more and more and more and more and more people being added to this area. Waste. So the rivers that they do have, if they wash their clothes in it or toss out bath water or like going to the bathroom water, if they throw their trash in it, if they somehow dirty that water source, well, then they're limiting their freshwater source even more. Unequal water distribution. Like we saw, Egypt has water. Other countries, they don't have that big Nile River going through them. Okay, all of these human factors add to the water scarcity as well. And remember that scarce means you don't have much of something. So water scarcity means that there's not much water. Skip that, skip that, skip that. So international conflict right here. Trying to figure out what I want to really pinpoint for you. International conflict. Egypt and Ethiopia struggle for rights to the Nile. Egypt feels that Ethiopia will control its water supply through the Grand Renaissance Dam. This could cause a loss of water and reduce the ability of Egypt's Aswan Dam to produce hydroelectric power. And I talked about that in the last video, how if you're upstream and you dam it off, then the person that's downstream, you're controlling how much water they can get by the dam that you built. So then when that happens in between countries, as in the case of Ethiopia and Egypt, if Ethiopia builds a dam and then they back up and have a lake in their country, well, they've got that because they've cut off the water supply of the Nile going up into Egypt. So then you get into this fight between governments over water. And that's all I'm going to That's all I've got to say about that. So just remember that in this area, we're seeing the same issues that we saw in the Middle East. A lot of oil money, not a lot of water. Okay. So as a result, you have a lot of conflicts because of control over the water. Okay.